About guns. I own a gun store. I own a gun range, and if you ever come to Memphis, Tennessee, I have a barbecue restaurant inside. So come on out and eat barbecue, and I'll let you shoot a machine gun. That's America right there, my friends. That's America. So the Second Amendment is something, I started this gun range. A lot of people probably don't know this. I was in a shooting several years ago. It was a gang initiation. And they call it having blood in the gang, where a younger gang member is getting in the gang. And they go with an older gang member. I say older, like one's 21 and one's 18. And you murder someone. And you do it so that if you ever get caught doing a crime, or if you ever want to get out of the gang, or someone ever tries to turn you to narc, you won't cooperate with the feds, because they will then tell on you where you murdered somebody. It's a pretty brilliant business move if you think about it. It's a little messed up, but it's pretty brilliant, right? They're gonna make sure that no one works for the feds, no one narcs. So I was a target. Best friend and I got out of a car. We were standing there saying goodbye, and two guys came up, drew guns, and it was pretty much on. I had a gun to protect myself. Was able to shoot back, save my life. I tell you that story because it's exactly the reason why I opened a gun range and a gun store. I wanted every law-abiding citizen that I could get my hands on to be taught how to protect and defend themselves and do it in a safe manner. We now see the Second Amendment under attack. We see a Biden administration that's saying we're gonna come after you. See, now in New York City, they're actually saying that you can sue manufacturers of guns if you're involved in the crime, which is insane because no one will be able to ever build a gun again. It'd be like saying you drunk drive and we're gonna charge Budweiser and we're gonna charge the company that made your tires and the company that had your car with a crime as well. Guns would cease to be built. No one could handle that litigation. You see what's happening right now, and it's very clear. This administration, I would argue, is more aggressive than any other administration in history coming after guns. How are we gonna stop it?
Well, the first thing to understand is Mr. Chipman, who's been nominated to be the head of the ATF, David Chipman. This guy is the most anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment nominee for this position in the history of this country. And so what the Freedom Caucus did, myself and the Freedom Caucus, we have lobbied the Senate to stop that guy. So first thing you have to do is stop the guy that's going to enforce the laws, and that's Mr. Chipman. So we're fighting him. He's not going to get a nominee. His nomination is going to fail. The second thing that you have to do is, we in Congress, we're in the minority right now, but we continue to introduce legislation, things such as regarding liability. There should not be liability on the implementation of the manufacturer, right? There should not be liability in the manufacturer if they've manufactured the gun correctly. That is on the user. The user must take all of the responsibility if they've misused the gun. So we're legislating. The third thing that we have to do, we have to have litigation. When President Trump was in office, he was sued on virtually every policy he attempted to initiate. And they would shop for a judge who would issue a nationwide injunction on that policy. We need to do the same to Joe Biden and his administration. And then the fourth thing that you have to do is, this administration backs down. We've seen it. They back down when the voice of the people rises up as one and condemns their bad policies. That's what we have to do. We have to gin up enough voices, loud and clear, so that the Biden administration knows that this is a political liability to them. They will back down.
You look at conservative states, and one cause and effect there is of the left going after guns is we've seen constitutional carry that has been rolled out in so many great states, including Texas. I would argue it took too long. We got it in Tennessee now. It took a little bit too long, but you guys had to wrestle with this because there was a lot of pressure from a lot of people in law enforcement that said, look, we need to know that a guy has a gun in the car, if they're a good guy or a bad guy, and having that permit helps us How did you guys figure that out in the legislature here?
You put your faith in your fellow law-abiding citizens. You start there. You ignore what the media is saying. And when you look at what some of the law enforcement groups were saying, not all of them, because I can tell you out in East Texas, my sheriff came down and testified in favor of constitutional carry. These same law enforcement groups that say, we can't let you have that freedom, are the same groups that are not going to be able to respond to even a serious 911 call 9, 10 minutes. So who is the first responder? It's the individual citizen is the first responder. And so, to your point, when you put your faith in law-abiding Americans, they're going to get it right. And then they're going to make the decision on how to protect their family, because it is a God-given right to defend yourself. And the modern tool for that is a firearm. And so this is not something that the government can take away. The government should stand there to protect that right, not to
Shall not be infringed.
Shall not be infringed.
Yeah. They forget that part. Shall not be infringed. I think there's a blessing that has actually come out of defund the police. We've seen it. Gun sales have seen it. People realize that when you have a police department that's 600, 700, 800, 900 police officers down, 1,000 down, 1,800, 2,000 police forces that are walking away while they're defunding them. You look at New York City, you look at the knife attacks, the stabbings on the street, things are happening in Minneapolis. You look at Portland where they're setting up new countries and are allowed to have lawlessness and no one is stopping them. When you can burn police cars, jump on top of them, twerk on police cars and get on TV for it and no one arrests you like we saw 2 weeks ago on TV, and burn down police stations and no one gets arrested for that. They didn't realize how many people that maybe were a little bit, I don't know about guns, who said, screw this, I'm going to buy one. Not only am I going to buy one, I'm going to buy ammo and learn how to use it. I don't think they had any idea what they were going to do when they defunded the police. As American citizens finally said, I'm not taking a risk with my family anymore. I'm going to get a gun for the first time. First-time gun buyers in this country are outpacing first-time home buyers, they say. Think about that number right now. It's incredible.
No, that's exactly right. So I am proud to be from Arizona, probably the earliest constitutional carry state. We've been that way for a long time. And in my hometown, you may not like this, but I do, it's the only place I know of where you have a gun range with a little cocktail lounge right off the gun range. After you're done shooting, you can go relax in there. That's really nice. Look, Americans understand that police officers, they want to get there, but they're far away. If you're in a rural area, they're real far away. And if you live in a suburban area or an urban area, they're still going to be late to the game. And the police officer's going to be there, hopefully to catch the bad guy running away or whatever. They're not going to interdict. They're not going to prevent. So the reason that we get to carry guns is because the founders understood very clearly they didn't give you that right. That's a God-given right to defend yourself. That's God-given. What the founders of this country understood, though, was they were going to recognize that right like it had never been recognized in any other country in the history of the world. We can't let that go away. If we're going to be a free nation, if the First Amendment's going to be invoked, and that's the things that allow us to get together, to speak, to worship, you got to have that Second Amendment, and it has to be there, and we're never going to give it up. And so they need to know. The other side has got to know. And we got to let the Biden administration know, because they're coming after you. They're coming after you with executive orders. They're not bringing it through Congress. They're coming after you with executive orders.
You're playing a game of chicken in Congress, obviously, on this issue. I have been an advocate for tougher gun laws. Let me explain what I mean by that. No one freak out. I'm talking about when you commit a crime with a firearm. I'm in favor of that gun law being very tough on you, that you actually go to prison. Where's the Freedom Caucus on an issue of having federal minimums that are actually real, where if you commit a crime with a firearm, we're actually not talking BS games, we're not going to let you plea out and get a deal. If you narc or turn on somebody else, we're going to rush you through the system quickly. You're not going to go to trial. Why can't we get something that's just straight up, this is it, you commit a crime with a gun and you go to prison, period?
Okay, so I want to make this really clear. I'm not going to disagree with you, but I am going to clarify something. Number one, there are too many duplicative federal crimes. There are over 40,000 federal crimes, okay? Most states can adjudicate what should be a crime in their state, not the federal government. And that means...
And I agree, but if you're in Chicago or New York, you can burn down a police station and AOC raises money to get you out of jail.
Yeah,
the vice president does, for that matter.
That's right. But here's the thing. Do you want to make a homicide where there's no traversing of any kind of state boundary? Do you want to make a homicide in Chicago a federal crime and turn it over to the federal DOJ? I don't. Federal court system? I don't. And the federal juries that are going to be sitting there? I don't. That should be up to that local jurisdiction. And if you want a mandatory minimum, doggone it, they're the ones that should do it because it's in their communities. That's me.
And I agree with that in principle. I do. This is why I love having these conversations. I agree with that in principle, but when you see cities that are being run by these anti-American socialist, Democrat leftists who have no problem with criminals walking out of a courtroom after committing heinous crimes, you ask yourself at that point, what do we have left? So you're a state guy, right? You're dealing with the state laws. What do you do then to compensate for the lack of what is actually happening when they get charged?
Ben, I don't think the problem is the law. I think the problem are the judges
and the DAs.
And the DAs who are bought and paid for by George Soros. Okay? We have seen this happen over and over and over again when you have district attorneys who just say, you know, we're just going to not prosecute all of these types of crimes.
Is our DA problem as bad as school boards? And I'm saying, if school boards is as bad that you have these activists that are running now nationwide who have just said, screw the law and what it says, I'll do whatever I think will get me elected. And the school boards, we see these activists have said, this is my stepping stone to socialism, and these Republicans are too stupid to be paying attention to what we're doing, and we're going to own this school system and indoctrinate an entire nation in one generation.
It's true in the big urban areas. Out in the mid-size and rural areas, we still have strong judges and strong district attorneys. But they are putting massive amounts of money into winning races for district attorney in places like San Antonio and Austin. They have taken those two spots. And now those district attorneys just say, you know what, low-level narcotics, we're not even going to prosecute them. Oh, but we're going to start prosecuting police for stuff that we never prosecuted them for before. So you can see the direction it's going.
Just real quick on that. In 2018, George Soros put money in 8 district attorney, county attorney races around the country, those prosecutors. We lost 7 of those. Only one we kept was Maricopa County, which is my county. But that's where they're going because they have an agenda with regard to law, and you get it from defund the police, but it's also don't charge. It's also no bail to be released, those types of things. That's what you're saying. It's lawlessness, and we're rule of law people. That's how you have freedom. Thanks.
Give a big round of applause, Representative Andy Biggs and Representative Schaefer. Thank you, guys. So last one, we're going to deal with big tech. Please give a big round of applause to the AG Louisiana, Jeff Landry, and